everybody. Welcome to NFL Fantasy Live. I'm Patrick Claybon here with Marcus Grant, Adam Rank, and Maurice Jones-Drew. Michael F. Florio is going to join us shortly. And guys, we had another Fitzmagic moment last night during the game and after the game, just showing off of all of his abilities, fashion and otherwise. Marcus, is there any fictional character that makes you think of Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I don't know if there's one specifically, but chances are good he probably killed a White Walker.
He's got kind of a Bray Wyatt vibe to him, you know, back in the early when he first was in NXT.
Well, since he's in Miami, who's the other guy in Miami Vice? I don't know the main character. Who was the other guy? Because that's what he reminds me of. Shirt out, silk on, he has linen pants. You know, he seems real Miami-ish right now.
I'm going to go, not that he's evil or bad, but I'm going to go with Moff Tarkin because it's maybe not the best long-term plan, but no matter what, something is going to explode. Let's get into this week's Sunday Showdowns. Throughout the show, we're going to hit every single Sunday matchup and help you identify the starts, sits, and sleepers in each game. We start with a game that seems like the favorite to be a big source of fantasy points this week. Dallas at Atlanta. Rank, who has your attention here?
Well, I'm going to go with Michael Gallup because I know a lot of people have probably been burned by him so far this season. But if there is an opportunity for him to really break out, it is going to be against the Seattle Seahawks, who've allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. So if you've been stung a little bit, don't worry about it. This is a great start for Michael Gallup.
Yeah, I'm going to say this is going to be a must start for DK Metcalf. Listen, you're going to have to score points to beat Russell Wilson. You're going to have to score points to beat the Dallas Cowboys, who put up 40 last week. I think that Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf connect on a couple of these big-time plays down the field.
Elsewhere, as we look at Green Bay and New Orleans, this is the battle of the veteran quarterbacks, Marcus.
Yeah, right now I'm saying maybe sit Drew Brees. The first couple of weeks have not been great. He's had fewer than 15.5 fantasy points in both of the games he's played this season. A lot of it is that he has struggled on his downfield throws, just has not been good on anything more than 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And now he's facing a Packer defense that's given up fewer than 250 passing yards in both of their games. This offense just looks a lot different without Michael Thomas. And until he gets back, I think I might be fading Drew Brees.
Speaking of number one receivers, Devontae Adams doubtful here. MJD, what does that mean?
Well, that means I'm going to start MVS, but I was going to start him either way because I just think the number two receiver, any offense is going to go against the Saints is going to kind of have a day. Well, with Devontae Adams out, expect the targets to pick up for MVS and expect him to use some of that speed down the field as they try to stretch this Saints defense as we see here.
All right, we got two undefeated squads, the Rams and the Bills in Buffalo. And I know we've been gassing up Josh Allen. I have as well. I'm going to go beware here for the explosive quarterback, mainly because if you're banking on this 27 to 30-point game from Allen like you've seen all season, I don't think it's coming against this, perhaps the best Rams defense they've had since the Super Bowl, giving up just 15 points a game to opposing quarterbacks.
You know, I would like to agree with you, Patrick, but Bills Mafia already thinks I have it in for him, so I'm not going to do anything of the sort. I will say, though, perhaps if I can curry favor with them, to sit Jared Goff, because, again, this is also a tough matchup for this Rams quarterback. The Bills have allowed 18 touchdown passes since the beginning of 2019. That's third fewest in the league, and we're just not seeing the Rams throw the ball as we would like. They've attempted 29 passes per game, which is 30th amongst all quarterbacks.
Let's go to the Lions and the Cardinals in the desert. MJD, what you got?
I'm going to say my sleeper pick here is going to be TJ Hawkinson. I think, again, with Galladay coming back, you have Marvin Jones who put up numbers. He is going to be the guy that's going to be forgotten about, especially some targets like this. In the red zone, you may get a touchdown or two in this game.
For the home team, I think you've got to go with Kenyon Drake here as a hammer start. Let's say that you were disappointed early on and you felt agitated when Kenyon Drake got on Twitter and told you, the fantasy player, to drop him if you were so mad about it. Get out of your feelings. Put him in your lineup against the team that gave Aaron Jones 46 points a week ago. Don't worry. Again, as we like to say, you drafted Kenyon Drake where you did for a reason. We got more game previews all this hour here on Fantasy Live. But first, let's get to the news. It's time for In Case You Missed It. Starting with Julio Jones. It's going to be a game-time decision against the Bears Sunday, according to his head coach, Dan Quinn. Still dealing with a hamstring injury. Fortunately for fantasy managers, it's an early game, which makes it pretty easy to wait until the last second to start or bench him. But Rank, what would Julio being out mean for Calvin Ridley?
Well, I think that you can say that Calvin Ridley has benefited when Julio is on the field. We saw it a couple of years ago when Juju had his breakout season with AB on the opposite side of him. So it would make things a little bit interesting if Julio is not out there, mostly because the Bears defense has allowed just one receiving touchdown this season. They haven't allowed a lot of fantasy points to wideouts. We saw what they were able to do to Marvin Jones without Kenny Golladay. So I would be worried about Calvin Ridley if Julio's unable to make it.
We got no Zach Moss against the Rams for the Bills. Coach telling us today that the toe injury might put a lot of the word on, of the load on Devin Singletary. Marcus, do you think Singletary is a good fantasy start this week?
I would give him a shot this week. I mean, I feel like the problem with Devin Singletary has not been one of talent. It's the fact that the Bills keep putting obstacles in his way. Last year it was Frank Gore. This year it's Zach Moss. That has sort of cleared out. I mean, unless they pull an okey doke on us and go with, say, TJ Yeldon or Tywan Jones, I don't think that's going to happen. The biggest question for Singletary is who gets the goal line work. Will it be him? Will it be Josh Allen down near the end zone? But the Rams have given up 120-plus scrimmage yards to running backs in back-to-back games, so this is a big opportunity.
A team that has dealt with a litany of injuries among its stars, it is the 49ers. These guys all out. Jimmy G will be replaced by Nick Mullins. George Kittle out. Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman. A lot of injuries for San Fran, but Rank, out of these dark fantasy clouds, perhaps there's a silver lining out there.
Well, I'm looking at Nicky Mullins, who last year had at least 18 fantasy points in 4 of his 8 starts. He's got a great matchup this week against the New York Giants, who've allowed 2.5 touchdown passes per game this season. That's the 3rd highest total in the league. And number one, if you're playing DFS and you want to have a saucy little contrarian type of cost savings at the quarterback position, I think Nick Mullins would be a pretty good choice there. And then I also wonder, is this going to touch off a quarterback controversy for the 49ers? Like, everything went so well for them last year. I'm curious how this works out moving forward.
A potential reignition of that Mullins versus Jimmy G conversation from a couple of years ago. A little news here from Juju Smith-Schuster himself. He didn't practice earlier in the week, but got in a full session today and says this: add me on fantasy. I'm playing this week. Here's the thing, Juju, man, you're rostered in 99.7% of leagues at NFL.com. But we do love the enthusiasm, man. Keep shouting out the folks that care about fantasy. Let's look back at last night's Thursday Night Football contest between the Dolphins and the Jags. MJD, undrafted rookie James Robinson looks like a must start in fantasy.
Yeah, if you watched the show on Wednesday, I said this guy was going to be money. I guess this is my humble brag. James Robinson is their offense right now. Gardner Minshew had a tough night, but the one thing you can count on is the Jags are going to run the ball and try to get the ball in this man's hands, and to put up almost 31 fantasy points to start off your Thursday night or to start off your fantasy week is going to be huge.
Yeah, you know what? This is my chance to give sort of a Minshew mea culpa here. My bad. I was one of the people who certainly thought that Gardner Minshew was going to have a big week for the Jaguars against this Dolphins defense. It didn't happen. And so maybe DJ Chark is more important to this offense than we realize. Jacksonville tried to use Chris Conley as its field stretcher. That didn't work very well at all for Jacksonville. And credit to the Dolphins defense. Look, they played better last night than they had the first 2 weeks of the season. Don't totally panic on Minshew. They've got a pretty good matchup next week against Cincinnati. So maybe if you need a streamer, we can try and re-up it again.
Yeah, I agree, Marcus. Everybody chill out. Like, you want to come at us for Gardner Minshew, but not reward us or tell us how great we are for James Robinson, Myles Gaskin? He had 14.5 points against the Jags last night here. And the one thing that we liked about him was the opportunity he was getting. And last night he ran the ball 22 times. And more importantly, he had 5 receptions, which is huge. So you look right now, it looks like Myles Gaskin is the running back to roster moving forward.
And we've already established that Ryan Fitzpatrick is good with a a blade forged from the dragon's breath. But after back-to-back weeks, around 25 points, I think Fitz is probably a better stream at this point in certain weeks than a few quarterbacks, especially some of those rookies out there, and especially seeing as the next game up is against the Seattle Seahawks, a defense that we'll spend and have spent some time discussing here this week on NFL Fantasy Live. Hey, Showdowns continue with the Raiders and the Patriots as we welcome back Marcus Grant and Maurice Jones-Drew. MJD, who are we looking at in Cam against your old squad?
Well, it has to be Julian Edelman, and I appreciate you. That was with the Raiders for like 8 months, but it's neither here nor there. Julian Edelman may have a day. It seems like him and Cam, they've got back. They've come on the right. They're in the same book on the right page as we see here. 179 receiving yards for Julian Edelman, and then guess what? The Raiders have given it up a little bit in the passing game. I think Julian Edelman is going to have a huge day. Must start.
Well, if you are looking for a deep sleeper, might be time to go Rex in effect. Rex Burkhead is the leader in backfield snaps there in New England. Now, admittedly, there was no James White for the team in week 2, but White and Burkhead had an equal snap share in the season opener. Now they're facing a Raiders defense that's given up the second most fantasy points per game to running backs. They've allowed the most receiving yards to running backs as well, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see Cam sort of using Rex Burkhead as a nice outlet to get the football to, and he has a pretty good day.
Let's New Jack swing it over to the Bears and the Falcons, two good fantasy offenses. One surprisingly so against a surprisingly bad defense, and that's why you start Jimmy Graham here. He's up against the defense that's giving up 22 points a game to opposing tight ends, and nothing against Greg Olsen or Dalton Schultz, but I do think Jimmy can equal some of that output.
Yeah, I have a sleeper for you in this game, Patrick, and his name is Hayden Hurst. And then I'll tell you what, we don't know what Julio's going to be able to do in this situation. We don't know if he's going to play. We know Calvin Ridley is going to have a game, but Hayden Hurst in this offense, the tight end is going to get a ton of opportunities. And the Chicago Bears are allowing the second most receiving receptions a game since 2019 to tight ends. I think this is a good sneaky matchup for Hayden Hurst.
And the Houston Texans traveling to the Steel City as their tough schedule continues. What you got there, Marcus?
Yeah, I'm saying to beware of Deshaun Watson. You talk about that tough schedule. I mean, they have to start with the Chiefs, then they follow that up with the Ravens, and now they've got the Steelers. No team has gotten quarterback pressures at a higher rate than the Pittsburgh Steelers so far this year. That's bad news for Deshaun Watson, who generally seems to get sacked a lot. He's already been sacked 8 times through the first 2 games of the year. This could be a game where the Texans sort of become one-dimensional, have to throw the football a lot. That only bodes even better for that Steelers defense if they can come after Deshaun. So you may not have a better option available to you, but this is one where I would be worried about his production.
Marcus, you said that so eloquently, and you said it so well that I have to say this. Start the Steelers defense if you have them. Again, I just think the Houston Texans, they don't have enough weapons to help Deshaun Watson. As you said, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're blitzing the quarterback 52% of the time. So they're trying to get after, obviously, any quarterback, especially Deshaun Watson. So it just seems to me that these guys are just playing at a high level right now. If you have them like I do, you better play them.
Joe Burrow is going to have to go up against them at some point twice this season. His team's going to meet against the Wentz wagon. Marcus, who are you starting?
I'm starting Miles Sanders. Make sure you get him in your lineup. Last week against the Rams, he had 27 total opportunities. He had 20 carries, 7 targets, and ended up with 3 receptions in that game. This Philly offense is desperately in need of some playmakers. And I think more importantly, they need some easy targets to try and get Carson Wentz going. He's had a rough start to the season. Cincinnati's given up the 4th most rushing yards. They still aren't likely to have Mike Daniels or Geno Atkins up front, so there should be room for Sanders to really get going.
Well, I have a sleeper in this game, and his name is Deshaun Jackson. I think he's going to take the top off in this. The Cincinnati Bengals are allowing 15 yards of reception this season, second most in the NFL. You want to talk about the big play that the Eagles are trying to get to. Well, if that pass rush, if they can hold up against this pass rush, which we've seen the Cleveland Browns take advantage of on Thursday night, last Thursday, don't be surprised if you see Deshaun Jackson catching a couple of deep passes down the middle of the field.
We're going to keep ripping through these games. More showdowns coming up. But now let's turn to breaking the ranks. Welcome in Michael F. Florio and Adam Rank. Florio is the author of our NFL.com fantasy player rankings, which you can and should use to set your lineup every week. Rank is here to highlight potential mistakes in Michael's life. Adam, where do you think Florio is wrong this week?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I like to break out the red pen like I'm an instructor, and I'm like, I don't agree with this one. And I'm looking at Drew Brees. who is currently ranked number 10. Florio, he's the QB 24. He's had fewer than 15 fantasy points in both games this season. To my knowledge, Michael Thomas is not playing, so what's up?
I get all of the Drew Brees concerns. I do. But I will say last season, he averaged 25 fantasy points per game at home to just 15 on the road. He had a tough week 1 matchup at home and then was on the road last week. He's at home this week, and this is a game where I think a lot of points could be scored between the Saints and Packers. But Rank, I'll say this. This is the week. Like, if Drew Brees disappoints again, he will be lower going forward.
All right.
And one reason to feel good about him, he's got one of the best in the game at running back in Alvin Kamara. Speaking of running backs, Rank, where do you think Florio's gone wrong there?
By the way, Drew Brees was in a dome on Monday. Whatever. And listen, Leonard Fournette, though, is a guy that we should talk about right now. Because, again, I really do believe that where he has him right now, it's 16th, which is respectable. But he's had 5 touches in the red zone, and it came last week against Carolina. To me, that means he should be an RB1. Why do you not like Leonard Fournette?
One big reason is he is not playing the Carolina Panthers this week. That is the best matchup for running backs. And instead, he's facing the Denver Broncos, who have allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points per game to the position. And I'm not completely sure that Ronald Jones is just gone for good yet.
All right.
So, yeah, still believing in Rojo. Let's look over at the wide receivers. Terry McLaurin, how do you feel about where he has him, right?
This one, like, come on. Are you serious? He's the wide receiver 14, which means he's not a wide receiver 1. Like, he scored 25 fantasy points last week. He's getting targeted a bunch. And I know you're going to be there like, he's not playing. Like, I know, but he's playing the Browns this week, who've allowed the 5th most fantasy points to receivers. I feel this is an outrage. Explain yourself, Florio.
I really like Scary Terry, and I do like this matchup for him. The one thing I do not like is the offense he plays in. Washington on the year is averaging just 200 passing yards per game. That's the 3rd fewest in football, and they've only had 2 passing touchdowns on the year. We've seen this offense hold Terry back in week 1, so I really like him. I'm just not ready to put him as a wide receiver 1 just yet.
I'll give you the Leonard Fournette one, but I'm going to say, nope, you move him up the rankings right now.
My 5 players that will win the week in fantasy for you. At number 5, it's Tyler Higbee. You know, Miami found some good matchups against Buffalo in week 2 using Mike Gesicki in the slot. Higbee was used pretty heavily in the slot in the week 1 game against Dallas. Be interesting to see if Sean McVay goes back to it and allows the 6'6" Higbee to use his height advantage over some of the smaller Buffalo defenders. At number 4 is James Conner. You know, we had a lot of hand-wringing about how he would do against Denver. Then he dominated the snaps and the touches against the Broncos. The Texans like to go 8+ in the box a lot. That hasn't really worked out well for them. They are ranked 30th in rushing defense. This could be a chance for Conner to go out and eat. Number 3, it is Amari Cooper. We keep hitting on this Dallas-Seattle game, and for good reason. For Cooper, he is 3rd in the league in targets through 2 games, has a nearly 28% target share and more than 36% of Dallas's air yards. Plus, Seattle, they've given up the most receiving yards to wideouts this season. At number 2, Melvin Gordon. Yeah, I know the Bucs defense, their run defense, isn't that bad, but they have given up the 2nd most receptions to running backs. The Broncos go into this one, no Drew Lock, no Cortland Sutton. They might use Gordon as a way to relieve some pressure on Jeff Driscoll, who was sacked 6 times last week. And at number 1, not really a surprise, it's Kyler Murray. He has accounted for 674 yards of offense, 5 total touchdowns, facing a Lions defense that's given up 5 touchdown tosses with no interceptions and are generating the 7th lowest pressure rate. Plenty of time for Murray to sit back there and pick apart this Lions defense. Those are my 5 winners of the week. If you don't have any of them, maybe pay attention to this next segment, right, Patrick?
Absolutely, because it's time to check out some surprising sleepers presented by Geico. Michael F. Florio pins our list of sleepers every week over at NFL.com/fantasy. So if your draft day didn't net you many studs, who might be worth picking up, Michael?
Yeah, one sleeper that I like a lot this week is Cowboys' new tight end, Dalton Schultz. He led the Cowboys with 10 targets in week 2, and if he sees volume like that this week, he could do a lot of damage because the Seattle Seahawks have allowed over 450 receiving yards per game. That is a huge number. I think if he gets that kind of volume, the new Blake Jarwin in this offense can be very, very sneaky.
Yeah, you know what? I like that pick, but I'm going to go with Chase Claypool for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big play wide receiver. I think down the stretch, him and Big Ben will get back on target, but we see a big touchdown here. He had a big catch week 1, and he is their deep threat. So if you're looking for a guy, if your receivers are a little banged up and you're looking for a guy to have a touchdown opportunity in a game, Chase Claypool is your guy.
Hard to have a guy that's such a big play machine be a sleeper. I've got a guy who's not necessarily a big play machine. It's Darren Fells, and this play is the reason why. I didn't know we were going to show this particular play, but I call it the unstoppable play. It's very stoppable sometimes, but when Bill O'Brien gets in trouble, he loves the play. Fells coming across the formation. Deshaun drops it off after faking the handoff there. I think they will be in trouble a lot this week, and I think that means more Darren Fells on this exact play coming up in this next game.
I'll still never forgive him for going to UCI over Cal State Fullerton. But my guy is going to be LaMichael Pirine. And listen, obviously you're not picking him up to start him this week, but I implore anybody, if you have extra space on your roster, if you have guys on the IR, had to cut somebody who's out for the season, what you want to do is search for somebody who at one point this season might have some upside. And I think the Jets are currently looking for playmakers. So you pick up Pirine, and if he balls out, then you're ahead of the game. You don't have to go to the waiver wire. He's already on your roster. Your fellow managers will be upset with you. And if he doesn't do anything, then you cut him. No worries.
All right, with all the injuries at running back, like the one that Ryan was just talking about, your squad could probably use a streamer, someone you could start in the short term to keep your team competitive. Well, our in-house filmmaker, Adam Rank, right there, he knows that new work could be the escapist adventure that you need. So here's a trailer for what we've got on Now Streaming.
Many years ago, a man called Jet made his way west in search of an honest day's work. It's a hard life on the frontier, and Jet struggled to make his dream a reality.
Jerick McKinnon out for the year. He missed all of 2018 with a torn ACL. 2 seasons in a row, he will be sidelined.
I work like I'm broke, so, it's hard to stop working.
But then, Jet discovered a rare opportunity, and the gold rush was on.
I think the guy you're really going after this week is going to be Jerick McKinnon.
Will those lucky enough to ride with Jet strike it rich in the West?
It's a rarity to have a skill position guy who sees the game like a quarterback still, and Jet does a great job of that.
Find out in Jet's Journey. Now streaming.
Time for points, counterpoints. Hypothetically, your work league arch rival Steve from accounting, who is also a bad person, somehow knew to start Ryan Fitzpatrick on Thursday Night Football. You enter the week into a 25-point hole. Rank, give us a quarterback that you feel confident in scoring 30 points or more, because a loss for Steve is a win for humanity.
Oh my gosh. You know what? He was watching NFL Fantasy Live yesterday when I was saying that Ryan Fitzpatrick was going to feast. So he ended up getting up to that huge lead. But I'm going to go with Josh Allen in this instance. And I know we talked about it earlier in the show that this could be a difficult matchup for him because that Rams defense is pretty good. But the one thing that I've really started to be impressed by with Josh Allen is not only the running. That's always been something that he's had, but his accuracy has really gotten a lot better. He's getting the ball downfield. For all the consternation we had for these receivers joining new situations, whether it's DeAndre Hopkins or Stephon Diggs, these guys have really stepped up and done a really nice job. So I think that Josh Allen has joined the elite and is somebody that you can start each and every week.
All right, MJD, Steve unplugged your router. He was able to beat you to James Robinson on the waiver wire, and now you need a running back. Who's going to get 25 or more?
That Steve is sneaky, but I think this pick and this player will hurt him more, not only because he's a rookie, but I know Steve's a Jags fan, and this guy I'm going to talk about plays for the Colts. I'm talking about Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack goes out. Jonathan Taylor's a guy that I think is going to have a huge day. We know the Jets defense just struggled. They gave up some big plays to the 49ers. to Raheem Mostert, especially the first play for 80 yards. This young man here is getting his opportunity. If you have him, you better play him because he's going to ball out this season, expecting 1,000 yards or more at the end. But in this one game, I think he's going to have a huge one.
A guy proving he could be a league winner here in 2020. And no receivers were able to score 25 plus last night. So Steve doesn't get us there, but we still want to vanquish him because he is bad, legitimately a bad man. I'm going to go with Corey Davis here in this matchup for the Tennessee Titans against the Minnesota Vikings. A.J. Brown out this week, so no A.J. Brown. Corey Davis is able to go up against the Vikings team. We've talked about the Seahawks being bad against receivers. Well, the Minnesota Vikings right there behind them, giving up 53 fantasy points a game to receivers. They're better against tight ends. I know Derrick Henry is going to try to eat, but I say go with Corey Davis, the Corey Davis game coming up here this weekend. Marcus, what about a tight end that's going to be able to break that 20-point mark in fantasy this week?
Yeah, I think the best way to break Steve's heart is to get a big game out of somebody that you're just not expecting it from. And in that respect, Austin Hooper, very much a deep sleeper this week. I know the first couple weeks have not been great for Hooper in that Cleveland Browns offense, but you look at what's happened to Washington the first 2 weeks. In week 1, they were lit up by Dallas Goedert, even though the Eagles didn't really have any wide receiver threats, and you kind of figured they had to throw to their tight ends. Then in week 2, look, the Cardinals haven't had a solid tight end since they were probably in St. Louis. They still targeted the position 5 times against this Washington defense because they felt they might have had something there. Hooper is not sharing tight end snaps or targets currently. You can't really run on the Browns, so this might be an opportunity for Baker Mayfield to put the ball in the air.
Be a couple wins in a row for the Browns. Good luck to all of you in your quest to take down your own personal Steve from accounting, except you, Steve. No good luck to you. Let's get to more game previews here. Panthers against the Chargers. There's a trend forming with the Panthers defense that you probably know about, Marcus.
That's right. The trend is start your running backs against the Carolina Panthers defense. They've given up the most fantasy points to the position through their first couple games this season. And look, whether it's Austin Eckler or Joshua Kelly, I think both of them are primed to have big weeks. They're both averaging more than 18 touches per game. And the good news is that last week with Justin Herbert at quarterback, both those guys saw more targets. So there should be some more opportunities for both of them to contribute through the passing game this week.
And that's a big part of the reason that I'm telling you to get on board with Robbie Anderson in this offense this week and maybe every week, because they're going to need to throw the ball as they can't stop the run or much else. This is the man getting the targets from Teddy Bridgewater, 18 of them through the first 2 games. Get Robbie again in the lineup this week. Let's look over to another matchup here, the Niners and the Giants, 2 teams that have dealt with a wealth of injuries thus far. MJD, what do you see?
You can read it. It says must start. Jerick McKinnon. Let's not forget that the Niners gave him a huge contract coming out of when he was in Minnesota to come to the Niners. They're only going to run the ball a ton with Nick Mullins at quarterback, but expect him to catch a lot of passes out of the backfield as well. Maybe even a little wildcat. I have a feeling that the Niners are going to get very creative this week.
Yeah, they might have to. For me, let's see what we got. Reading it. It's beware of Devontae Freeman. I know you were excited to get that waiver claim on him. Everyone loves volume, but this is a team that is last in the league in carries at about 19 a game. So how many of those carries do you really think Devontae Freeman is truly going to get here after landing just a few days ago? He's a pickup that's going to be good, perhaps for the rest of the season. Not against San Fran on Sunday. We'll leave there and look over at Tampa Bay against Denver. Rank, any faith in the GOAT this week?
No. I'm going to say sit Tom Brady. And I know a lot of people are having fun with. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Listen.
What?
I know a lot of people are. MJD, I'm telling you to sit him. Listen, your 55 touchdown thing is not happening. And I know for everybody who loves to point out, like, you told me to start Gardner Minshew over him. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's wrong yet. So I would sit Tom Brady.
What? So there's no Sutton, there's no Jeff Driscoll, perhaps no 55 touchdowns for Tom Brady. There's a lot going on in the Denver offense, but the constant this season so far is Jerry Jeudy. He's going to get 7+ targets, as he has in both games this season. And as good as this Bucs defense has been, they just allowed 2 top 15 wideout performances in one game against Carolina this week, as MJD still reacts to this idea that Maybe
What is
Tom?
going-
No? Befuddled?
Really? Tom Brady versus the Broncos? No.
Does he ever play well in Denver? No. Like,
I
sit
don't know.
him.
I don't care if he ever plays well. He's playing the Broncos. They're beat up.
Derrick Henry, a first-round pick with 0 touchdowns to show for it in the first 2 games, but it is Feel Good Friday, MJD, so help us cure the King Henry blues.
I don't understand why everyone's so upset. It was just a bad game. Excuse me, and he was playing my Jaguars, but because everyone's upset, let me blow out my boombox. Cue the music.
Let's do it.
Because it is Friday. Why are we worried about it? Roll the tape. Let me show you why there's no reason to be concerned here. Here we go. Derrick Henry, as we're going to see here, pause. We got blocks on blocks on blocks, hats on hats. He's going to find a way to get skinny at 250 pounds, get through the hole. The way he finishes the run is awesome. Okay, here against the Chiefs. Now, these are all from last year, and I get it. Everybody's upset, but I have to remind you who Derrick Henry once was and who he still is and who he will be. As the season goes on, makes the guy miss, takes it to the crib. No problem. All right, look at that's pure speed. Now, against the Houston Texans with the playoffs on the line, he has to get it going. He gives you 200 plus yards in this game, puts his foot in the ground, cuts back, okay? And then he does what we always talk about. He's on that milk carton. He got missing, right? Into the end zone, found his way to the crib, not mad at it. And Patrick, I have to tell you this. Did you not notice there was no emojis? There was no funny stuff going on? Did you not notice that I'm wearing this tie?
No.
Because I'm wearing it for a reason. Because Derrick Henry is like I am. He's about his business. And he will bounce back this week against the Minnesota Vikings. And if you have him, there's no reason to be afraid.
Okay, because the GOAT, while it was fun, having Tom Brady throw the actual GOAT, we enjoyed it. It didn't work out for Tom. Maybe keeping it straight middle down the fairway with the big running back. Maybe that's the way to go. That's MJD. On Feel Good Friday, we're feeling good. No Tom Brady. We're feeling good about Derrick Henry. Let's get back to our Sunday showdowns. Michael F. Florio, Marcus Grant joining us again. We'll start with that game between the Titans and the Vikings, Michael. Who else are you feeling pretty good about?
I would start Ryan Tannehill with confidence this week. Since he has taken over as the starter for the Tennessee Titans, he has just one game with less than 17 fantasy points. He has 9 straight games with multiple passing touchdowns in it. That's really impressive. And then he has a great matchup too. The Vikings have allowed the 5th most passing yards per game to QBs and the 3rd most passing touchdowns. So for me, Ryan Tannehill comes in as a top 10 quarterback this week.
Over on the other side, the demise of this Vikings offense is real, and I think you see a Kirk Cousins that's riding a struggle session, the likes of which his career hasn't yet seen. And I know everybody took Adam Thielen to be the volume guy, and maybe garbage time can come through as it did for you in week 1, but week 2 didn't work out for you. And it's just not fun to have to wait on a guy you drafted to be one of your best receivers to have some success in garbage time. Tough. I'm sitting Adam Thielen this week. Elsewhere, we got a rematch of Super Bowl III, Jets and Colts in Indianapolis, Marcus.
Yeah, I'm calling the Colts a sleeper defense, although I think if you look at their salary on DraftKings this week, that might not exactly be the case. But you know what? They're facing a Jets offense that's averaging just 215 yards per game through the first 2 weeks. The only fully healthy receivers on their roster going into this game are Chris Hogan and Josh Malone. Braxton Berrios is questionable, and as much as I love Frank Gore, I don't really have any faith that he can carry this offense at his age. Colts have given up the fewest total yards through 2 weeks, 3rd most sacks. Make sure you get them in your lineup where you can.
And for me, I know folks were burned by putting Nyheim Hines maybe in their last flex spot last week. You needed about 8 or 9 points. It got 1 catch for 4 yards. Worry not. I think the usage at the running back position last week was an anomaly. Hines gets more action, maybe a touchdown against the Jets. And remember, folks, he has more catches at the running back position than almost everybody in the NFL this season. Last but not least, guys, we got the football team against the Browns. And Florio, you've got a little bit of a surprise for us here.
Yeah, I'm saying beware Nick Chubb. I know in most seasonal leagues you won't be able to bench him, but I would avoid him in daily. The Washington football team is allowing the 2nd fewest fantasy points per game to running backs this season and just 73 rushing yards per game. So my fear is that if the Browns can't get success on the ground, they look to throw more to the running backs, and we know that's going to help Kareem Hunt as we saw in week 1.
Yeah, Flory, I'm going to take what you're saying. I'm going to say start OBJ. I know he came out this week and was like, hey, I'm not going to get as many yards and touchdowns. That's how you play coy. Hey, don't throw me the ball. I just want to win. No, throw him the ball. This week, he's going to have a huge game because the Washington football team so good at stopping the run. It's going to open up the pass for those guys.
Here on NFL Fantasy Live with a next-gen nugget, which are always delicious. Michael F. Florio, tell us about this perfect storm for fantasy managers in the Cowboys-Seahawks game.
Yeah, it's with their receiver, CeeDee Lamb, who has ran the second most routes out of the slot this season. And that really bodes well for him this week because no team has allowed more fantasy points to slot receivers than the Seattle Seahawks. And in fact, they're allowing over 200 receiving yards per game to wide receivers in the slot. Only one other team is allowing over 100 this year. So I think CeeDee Lamb, who it looks like in the last couple of weeks has surpassed Michael Gallup in this offense, I think he has a big breakout welcome to the NFL type week this week.
So get CD into your lineups, and if you're playing daily, you can make a day of it with him as a budget-friendly receiver. Marcus, you put Lamb in your daily lineup this week. Who else made your squad?
Yeah. I did. I had CeeDee Lamb in there, as you mentioned, sort of a budget-friendly guy, especially for what the production is, and especially because I had Dak Prescott at the quarterback spot, so I was able to sort of stack those guys together. I really like the wide receiver group I put together, especially Allen Robinson, and I know last week was not a great week for Robinson, just the 33 receiving yards there. I think he bounces back against the Falcons this week. Atlanta, you know, they tend to play in some high-scoring games. That means the onus may be on Mitch Trubisky to try and keep the Bears in this one offensively, and usually that means a lot of targets in the direction of Allen Robinson. So I think he has a nice rebound performance and is a good guy to slot into your daily leagues this week.
Here's my team. I didn't include Allen Robinson, although it should be pointed out that he had James Bradbury for the most of last week. But if you see what I did here, I'm going to go double stack. I'm going to have Russell Wilson with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf because I anticipate this being a high-scoring game. And Russell Wilson has had over 30 fantasy points in weeks 1 and 2. That's happened only once in the last 50 years, and it happened last season with Lamar Jackson. And I think we can anticipate this continuing. I know everybody was talking about let Russ cook this season, but with that Legion of Boom defense being the Legion of Boom in name only, it means that they're going to have to throw the ball to stay in these contests, which means a lot more opportunity for Russ Wilson. So the season that we've wanted to see out of him, it seems like we're going to get that this year.
And so much attention placed on this game. Looking forward to seeing the Cowboys and the Seahawks and just how many points they can put on the board. As Michael F. Florio pointed out, slot receivers get healthy against the Seahawks. They also have an all-pro safety in Jamal Adams who rushes the passer 10 times a game. So perhaps those two things might be correlated just a bit. But we will leave you able to prepare for all of the games this week. That's it for us today. Good luck to you this weekend. We're coming back Monday with our big breakdown of the Chiefs and Ravens on Monday Night Football. Looking forward to that game. Looking forward to seeing you there. Have a good weekend. Everybody, thanks for watching.